Please mind the gap between Indonesia and the UK. Mind the Gap is a student podcast hosted by students to bring you mindful day-to-day conversation from Indonesian students in the UK. My name is Beth, postgraduate student at Imperial College London.
And my name is Angel, postgraduate student at University College London. And our writer, Tamara.
From culture shock to the best value for money grocery stores, we aim to bridge the 12,000 kilometer gap between Indonesia and the UK to help Indonesian students adjust and stay healthy, physically, mentally, and financially. Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of Mind the Gap. First of all, the stats was just in, and we'd like to thank you all for your support. We just found out that a lot of you have been tuning in and listening to us, and we'd like to let you know how grateful we are that you're a part of this community. And also, good luck for your application process for 2021-2022. I know that at this point, it must have been closed already, at least for international students. And for current students, congratulations on surviving this far. It is a beautiful, beautiful day today where we're recording. The sun is out and we're about to enter spring. So these past couple of days have been getting warmer. So on this very nice day, we have a guest. Our very first special guest.
Welcome,
Hi.
Kheeran.
Kheeran.
Hi, thank you. I'm so happy I can be your first guest today.
Yay. Okay,
Really
so
excited.
who are you and why are you here today?
Okay, so my name's Kheeran. Today I guess I'm here because I'm a student who's in the UK. I've spent the last 5 years as a student in the UK. So I arrived in 2016 and I did my undergraduate, which was an integrated master's. Graduated last year and now I have started a PhD, all at University of Bristol.
Okay, so you're currently in PhD. Like, what are you working on?
So a bit of background on my undergrad. So I started doing a undergrad in mathematics and computer science, and from there I went down the more theoretical research route of computer science, and now I'm studying algorithms. I'm doing a PhD in algorithms at the University of Bristol. So it's kind of like getting the computer to work as fast as possible with as little cost,
see.
essentially. So far I've done about 6 months, just under 6 months of my
Oh, so
PhD.
you just started.
Yeah, I've just started.
Oh, wow. Long way to go.
Yeah.
Isn't it like 4 years for PhD?
Yeah, exactly. It's 4 years for a PhD, and I mean the minimum that you can do it in is 3. I think that's what they say. I have funding for up to 4 years. Yeah.
And you took like master right from your undergrad and then continue straight to PhD, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I just it was an integrated master's. So from 4 years, 2016 to 2020, I graduated with a master's in engineering, they call it. And from there, I applied for my PhDs, and I managed to fortunately get back into University of Bristol.
Wait, it's integrated, so you get your undergrad and your master at the same time, or is it not like that?
So you don't actually graduate with a bachelor's at any point. So what happens is at the end of your 4 years, you graduate straight away with a master's.
Oh, this is the new system. Like, I just heard about it.
Yeah, it's something that I guess is more common in engineering. So something most engineers, they will take 4 years, they'll get their engineering degree and they'll graduate with a master's in engineering, whereas I think most other departments have their 3-year bachelor's and then you can do a master's after that, which takes about 12 months, I think, if I'm not mistaken. In the UK, at least, it's 12 months. I have a friend who's in Sweden who takes 2 years. Other parts of Europe is 2 years. Sometimes in the US, it's different.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and that's so you moved away in your teenage years, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Uh-huh.
So I was 19 when I moved away. 19 turning 20. It was a very nice experience, I would say. Moving away, you get your independence from your family. You've kind of thrown into this new environment where you can learn different things and you meet different people. And I don't know, it was something that was difficult at first, no doubt. But I think overall was definitely something that I would do again. And look, I'm still studying now. I'm doing a PhD as well. So
definitely. And Angela is also moving out the first time.
Yeah, this is my first time moving away from family.
Oh wow! How do you find that?
I don't know. It's like starting a new life, because usually I'm very dependent to my family, and then now I have to be independent. Yeah, it's a bit hard first, but yeah, I have to, I guess.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the hardest thing I found at the start when I first came was like, unfortunately, so I was cooking initially, making food. That was something that I just never did. Unfortunately, I stayed in halls in my first year, and so I had catering, and so they cooked my breakfast for me, they cooked my dinner for me, but they asked you to do your own lunch. And my lunch just ended up being Maggie, Indomie, ended up being leftovers from breakfast. Yeah, it was really difficult. Well, what about yourself, Beth? Have you? This is your first time?
No. Actually, I moved out from home when I was in undergrad. So I took my undergrad in Indo, but I live in Jakarta, and then my undergrad was in Jogja. It was like 1 hour flight away from home. Yeah, so I moved out when I was 16. The hardest thing I found was finding food. The fact that food is not magically appear on the dinner table, that you have to actually go out or cook it or like buy some. Yeah, it was that's actually like a new experience back then.
Did you do a lot of cooking back then?
No, not really. We have a very, very rich culture in takeaway, right? Yeah, although it's like Go Food or like Grab Food is not exactly established by then. It's still in Jogja. It's a student city, so there's a lot of like food stalls and cheap foods around. You can just go out and buy instead of cooking yourself. I started cooking when I started living on my own in Jakarta at my apartment, and here actually. I live with a flatmate that really, really loves cooking, and I learned a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I didn't mention just now is also I'm from Malaysia, so we've got the same sort of situation, and from KL as well. So, any time of the day, you can get food very easily.
Yeah.
Very, very easily. And so I think here was that
and
that
cheap
big culture
and good
shock.
too, right?
And cheap and good, yes. Those are the main things. But then here the culture shock is, if you want good food, it's not cheap.
Right.
If you want cheap food, it's not good.
Exactly.
And if you want a good and cheap food, you have to cook it for yourself. And sometimes not even good because you don't know how to cook.
That's right. Sometimes we cook only for surviving.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it starts off cheap and bad. And everyone will start off cheap and bad, and then hopefully we get to cheap and good.
So is that your?
I think that Indomie was always cheap and good though.
Indo, yeah. Most of them are. Yeah.
That's true.
So is that your initial impression of the UK, like the food, or are there any initial impression when you first moved here?
Food-wise, I think that was my initial impression. You wanted to, cook as much good food as possible because it's very difficult to get here. But one thing also, other thing was also the weather. I'm telling you, coming from Malaysia as well, it's tropical weather. It's sunny all the time, humid, rain. That's all we get. So the winter here, the first time the winter here is just
brutal.
It's brutal.
I feel traumatized.
I mean, have you guys experienced winter before this year?
No, Not really, because this is the first time I've been in Europe. Like anywhere in Europe, this is my first visit. And I went to US in March, like 2015. So it's not exactly winter, but yeah. So this is my first winter.
Yeah, me too as well. Before I went to Europe, it is summer, so it's nothing different from Indonesia. And now I came here in winter, and suddenly it's very, very cold.
Yeah.
And then winter blues,
Yeah,
and then
I think that's the biggest culture shock for me, was the winter blues actually. And I think UK has this culture, at least in my opinion, at least what I've seen, is when winter comes, everybody changes their mentality. Everybody gets a little bit more reserved, and everyone feels a little bit everything. It's more gloomy, right? The weather, you don't have sun, you have all the clouds, and people are just a little bit more stay inside or don't do much. It's cold, right? But I was fortunate as well before too. It wasn't my first winter when I came to the UK, so I've spent winter. My very first winter was in France in 2013. And when I was in winter there, actually, at least maybe the difference was I was staying in a family when I was there, and they have all of these different like cultural kind of traditions that they do in winter. This kind of food we eat during winter because it keeps us warm. They eat like really, really rich foods. And then obviously Christmas, they celebrate during winter time. So they have a lot of things which they do over winter. And one thing that I found here is, this as a student, was you don't get those traditions when you come here during winter. You're like stuck in your accommodation or with your friends and everything. And as an international student, especially, you are dealing with, the winter without the winter traditions, for example. In the UK, as a student especially, you come and you experience winter, but you don't have the traditions that, come with winter. Like if you were in a family in the UK, for example, you'd have all of the winter traditions, you celebrate Christmas and all of that. But then as a student, you don't get that. So you see all the local friends, all your British friends, they'll go home, they'll go to their families over winter, they'll go and do their things. Then you're here as an international student, you're stuck here, you're like, so what's there to do over winter? And then it just gets a bit, it's culture shock lah. It's a big culture shock.
Yeah, exactly.
At the start.
Please mind the gap between Indonesia and the UK.
With the whole weather, winter and stuff, and you still stay here for like another years, not even another 1 year, but will be like the next 4 years. Like why did you choose to study in the UK?
So initially I came to the UK because, well, for one, I followed the British system growing up as well. So I was very familiar with the British system, and I also wanted to, how we grow up and we're always told like the good education systems are the UK education system, the American education system, and you don't really hear much else. Of course, there's loads of really good education systems throughout Europe, throughout Asia, even everywhere. But these are the main ones which you hear about growing up. And all your uncles and aunties tell you, oh yeah, UK is great for studying. My son, my this, my that. I studied in the UK, and so it's always I think subconsciously, UK has always had that presence, at least for me. Like you go to UK, your life will be good. And then one other aspect as well is that UK. My mom is also from the UK.
Oh.
So she's born here actually. She's born here and then she moved to Malaysia with my dad, and then we grew up there. But yeah, so she was born here, so that was also a very big pull factor for me to come to the UK.
Wait, so does that make you UK citizen?
Technically, I don't have a passport, but I can stay here for as long as I
want. You don't need student visa or anything like that?
I don't need a visa.
It's nice.
But the problem, the thing is, I have a visa and I'm technically a citizen, but I still have to pay international fees. That's the problem. And
is it because you don't live here for a certain amount of time?
Exactly, yeah. They have a rule, something like you have to live here for 5 years or something like that. But no, so the fees obviously was a big factor there. But one reason why I ended up coming to the UK was because I managed to get a scholarship to study here. And so there's a scholarship which paid the fees. Otherwise, the other options like France, for example, or Germany, would have been cheaper, I guess. Yeah.
But for France, you have to learn French, no? Or do you already speak French?
So I spent a year in France in 2013. So I lived there for a year. It was like an exchange trip. And so I managed to pick up the language, and I managed to pick up the language to a level where I could do university essentially.
What do you like about the education system in the UK, and maybe what you don't like about it?
Well, I can very easily tell you, first thing I don't like about it is that it's expensive, 100%, because it really limits the number of people who can come and study here, just especially from overseas, from abroad. Obviously, locals have their own, they have their student loans. But when you come from abroad, then or outside EU, you have to pay for it all of it by yourself. And so you can't actually, if you don't have the money to do it, or if you don't have the sponsorship to do it, you can't study here, right? That's one terrible thing about the UK, definitely. But there's so many really good things about it. Obviously, they're very well connected. Cutting edge research is done in the UK. Hubs, there's so many hubs in the UK, like London, for example, Manchester as well up north, where you can actually get really good jobs. So if you come and study here, you're already 1 foot into the job market. You already understand it a bit better. So many pluses. I mean, I can go on and on about the positives.
You mentioned that you follow British curriculum from early on, right? Like even from your like elementary school, like high school. So it's not really an adjustment when you move here and start your undergrad.
I would say it's definitely an adjustment. So I moved into the British system. So I moved to a British international school at the age of 11. So before that, I was in local school, and I moved to international school. Depending on, I mean, obviously the education system, and you're learning the same history, you're learning the same math, the science that they'd expect you to know before you come to uni. And then I did my GCSEs, IGCSEs, and then I also went on to do A-levels as well. So if you follow the standard of progression, UK universities expect you to have A-level knowledge. And so when you learn, let's say you go into first year, you learn a couple of units, for example, they are going to be teaching it for people who've done A-levels. Whereas I knew some people, for example, from Romania, and their maths especially, they'd gone to specialized math schools, and their maths was far more advanced than anything that most British education systems had done, up till A-levels. And so they were finding first year, second year even really, really easy, where, I was also struggling, I guess, a little bit. So there's a big difference in.
Is there any difference that you notice between the teaching process here and back home? Because I feel like I'm studying in business school right here. So I feel like the difference was that the teachers here didn't really give you a straight answer to your questions. Let's say, for example, I would ask some things like about subject A, and they would say, that's an interesting question. Why do you think that is? Like you were invited or encouraged to find the answer yourself. And if you cannot, then they will ask questions that leading up to the answers. So you were encouraged to do the critical thinking yourself instead of just giving you a straight answer. That's what I feel like. Do you have like any experience, the difference between the teaching here and back home?
Thinking about it now, exactly like what you said. Yeah, definitely that's really true. No, yeah, back home at least, like teachers want you to do something a certain way, and they'll tell you, here's how you do it, this is how you do it.
Because like my Indonesian side would be like, hey guys, I'm paying you. like I'm asking you questions here.
Just give me the answer. No, that's an interesting observation actually. Yeah, I noticed that. Very true. But one thing which I also didn't add is, as a PhD student and even in my undergrad, I do some teaching as well. So I do some teaching for assistant teaching for units in undergrad units. And actually, one thing that I've noticed is that's a really good way to teach, in a sense, where if somebody has a question and somebody wants to find out the answer, if you just tell them the answer, great, they'll get the answer to it. They can go and continue and move on. But if you really want them to learn and you really want them to understand why the answer is so, then you probe and ask the right questions. It's something that also I guess, like you mentioned it now, but it's something that I subconsciously never did. But as I've been a teacher in the system, they obviously have these training courses where they ask you to learn,
Uh-huh.
but they teach you how to teach essentially. And they show that these are better ways to engage and probe the students as opposed to giving them the answers
Yeah, I
straight
found
away.
it helps with memorizing as well. So it helps me with memorizing because I find it difficult to find this answer. So I memorize it quite quickly because, I experienced difficulty learning about it. I was just about to ask that you mentioned you're also teaching because of your PhD. Like how has 2020 affected your work, as in like you're teaching right now? Is it all gone online or?
Yeah, so everything's gone virtual. It's weird sometimes because you're staring at a screen of people who, for one, you've never met before, and two, a lot of them switch off their videos. So you're staring at a blank screen trying to teach something and you don't actually have feedback. So normally when you're teaching, you have these visual cues, you have feedback from people to see how well they're understanding what you're saying. And if you don't have that, it's very difficult to know when to stop. And you guys have obviously seen that I also find it difficult to know when to stop. So I'll just be talking. I think the other day I was just talking for about half an hour, 45 minutes. And I wasn't sure if people were on the same page as me. And so it takes there's a change in how you would teach. And so you have to be a bit more cautious and careful about that. Definitely very, very different. Well, I'm curious actually from your end, since both of you are students as well, how do you find this whole experience of engaging with the teacher in virtually?
Angela, do you want to start?
We were discussing this actually.
Oh yeah, the three of you.
Well,
We were discussing this actually like a few episodes ago about the whole student experience with the virtual learning.
Yeah.
And so, like none of us turned on our video as well. So.
Well, if it's 9 a.m. class, I won't turn on my video, like turn on my camera because I will be still half asleep. Yeah, but if it's like afternoon class, I can turn on my camera. But on morning classes, I mostly turn off my camera because then I was still like laying in my bed and still trying to gather my soul and like still buffering,
yeah. And also like you said before that you are asking the people to answer some questions, right? And it's actually a good way to engage with the class, I think, because a lot of my professors didn't do that, and then the engagement is very, very low, I think. So when you are asking it, I think it's a good way to engage with the students as well.
So are they just throwing you the material?
Yeah. They just do the lecture one way, I guess, and it's a really terrible class. I can say.
Yeah. They might as well put their lecture on YouTube and ask you to
terms
watch.
of engagement, like in my class, it's actually still pretty good. It's just the fact that, well, in business school, we rely heavily on networking, right? We join business school not just for the material, but like for the classmates that we're going to meet, like the professor that that going to teach us, like the networking with the companies. And as much as I love that I don't have to commute to school or like to commute to the places that will have the networking events, the networking through virtual does not feel the same with when you meet the people like face to face. That's my take.
Yeah, I completely agree. And as a PhD student, we have to attend these conferences as well. And same thing, like one of the big things when you go to conferences is networking. And now it's so difficult. It's really impossible. Like the number of PhD students who I know, well, 2 or 3, and those are friends and people who I've known before I even started my PhD, which is it's difficult this year. And I can imagine for doing a business as well, masters, it's such a crucial aspect of your learning as well. It must be really difficult. How are you doing anything in particular? Is there anything that your university is doing to help
encourage what? Oh, the networking. They've been
networking.
great. I mean, they've been facilitating a lot of networking session with a lot of companies, a lot of recruiters, and also like helping us. So basically, they have event for like our class, and they have like career fair like for spring term and all that. But of course, everything is done virtually. So
Yeah, for me
yeah.
as well, the same. Because I study
Yeah.
management. I think it's like the same with the business schools.
Mhm.
They have a career consultant as well, career fair, something like that.
Please mind the gap between Indonesia and the UK.
So speaking of working, do you feel any difference in terms of like the culture, the working culture between? Well, I know when you're in Malaysia, you haven't worked, but at least like from what you know, is there any like difference between working in Malaysia and in the UK, let's say?
Yeah, so my only point of comparison will be I've done an internship in Malaysia. So one of my summers I did an internship in Malaysia, and comparing that to the UK, it'll be very difficult. But I know that the work culture in Malaysia versus the work culture in UK is so different. When I was in my internship, right, the team that was in charge of me, we could very easily just, we take our coffee breaks, we take our tea breaks, we take our lunch breaks, and there's so many breaks throughout the day. Like half the time is spent sitting in the cafeteria, which is amazing. I'm not complaining because I got to sit there, get to talk to people, and I really like talking to people. So I get to talk to people, communicate, just joke around, meet new people as well, while still not getting in trouble with my boss, which was really good. But then when you come here, I think people have they have this sense of, if you're working, you've got to get your work done. It doesn't matter how long you spend in the office, doesn't matter how long you do this, you just do your work. And people, I guess, I would say they're more focused on getting the job done and getting the work done, as opposed to, the lepak lah, as opposed to just chillaxing or building relations with people around you. It's at least that's something that I've experienced in teaching in my field. So where I'm a teacher, University of Bristol, which of course is, if you go to different fields and different areas, you'll get different types of people, regardless of country. But this is how I feel.
I know back in Indonesia, a lot of jobs are relying heavily on how good your relationship with your coworkers, or like with your boss, especially like the promotion or like the kind of work that you can get is heavily depending on how good your relationship with your boss, basically. Does that happen as well here in UK?
That's a tricky question. I mean, in terms of work-wise, I have a feeling it does, but I can tell you for a fact that in terms of what I'm familiar with was the process of getting my PhD, for example. That helped a lot, because normally there's a lot of standard ways you apply for. You go through your application process and all of that, the bureaucratic channels. But then I also fortunately got to meet my supervisor before I even started the application process, and so he was one of the lecturers there. So I went to his office one day, and we just sat there and we chatted for 2 or 3 hours, and we just vibed really well, bouncing off ideas and discussing a lot of different things. 2-3 hours, not a problem. And then we had to actually stop ourselves from talking because we realized we had other things to do. But then from that initial conversation, from that rapport building initially, we both had, some sort of trust among each other, and we knew that both of us were leading in a similar direction. And so when it came to applying for my application, he put in extra effort to help me get the position. He went above and beyond what he needed to do to make sure I got the funding, to make sure I got the position. And there were a few hiccups along the way, and I think if it wasn't for that bond and rapport that I built with him, I would not be doing my PhD now, just because of the bureaucratic system. So I definitely say yes in the UK.
It's basically, it's pretty much the same. Right. So talking about PhD, I guess, for our viewers, who might be interested in doing a PhD, could you explain the process of application, like generally?
Yeah, no, definitely. So depending on the university, obviously every university has their own setup, but generally what you'd need is, firstly, you'd need your supervisor. So you need to know, okay, wait, I mean, before I explain that, so in the UK, let me start with the UK. So the UK, there are two types of ways where you can go into getting a PhD or getting a doctorate, essentially. Excuse me. One where you go directly into doing a PhD, and there's another one that they call now, recently a lot more have opened up, is called Center for Doctoral Training. And yeah, so the process for both of them are very different. So if you want to go into a PhD, the process which I took is you apply to a university, you find your supervisor, find an area of research that you're interested in, and you have to write a research proposal. So you have to propose and say, here's the kind of research that I want to do, and this is what I'm going to need. It's in line with these particular goals of some research body. And when you're applying for funding, you want to make sure that whatever you're researching into aligns with the goals of some funding body as well, so that they're more likely to fund you. And that's the standard general PhD. But then these days, there's also this thing called the CDT, where directly from your undergraduate, what they do is they will train you to do your PhD. So you go from your undergraduate, you don't need a master's, go from your undergraduate into these CDTs, where the first year is kind of like a master's, but then you immediately, second year, you start doing this, your PhD program, you start doing your research. So application for those are not as involved in the sense where you have to write an entire research proposal and do all of that research. But obviously, if you have that, it does help, but they'll still take you on without that.
Yeah, I think
exactly.
I've heard that process before.
I was gonna ask, do both of you have to do thesis?
No, I think I will have like a consulting project by the end of the summer term. Yeah.
And I have to write a business research or business plan.
Those sound very foreign to me.
If you're not familiar with the professor or the supervisor, then, and if you're still undergrad, you would probably be benefited from like the second admission path, right? Because you don't have to write your own proposal. You don't have to know anyone to get there. Yeah.
No, you don't. Obviously, if you do, it's helpful, but you don't need it. And one thing that they all require is references.
So is that something that only undergraduate can apply to, or is it possible for master students to apply as well?
No, undergrads can do it, but it turns out that a lot of people do their masters and realize, wait, I want to change direction. I don't quite like my masters, so they'll go and pivot and do a CDT.
Well, okay. As you are also a student and a teacher, maybe you want to share some tips or advice that for students that will study in the UK in the upcoming years or now even.
I would definitely say make a lot of friends. Make a lot of friends outside of your course, definitely. But if you want to make your life easier within your course and your studies, make friends with people on your course as well who have similar academic interests, because it's very difficult to do a degree by yourself. But if you have like 4 or 5 friends, or even 1 or 2 friends, and if you can, avoid group projects, 100%, definitely. I say that because more often than not, group projects, they pair you with people you don't know, and working with people you don't know is so difficult. I'm telling you, oh my god, that's, I think, one of my worst nightmares in my studies. And more often than not, I picked either units where I could choose my team, or choose like one person who I could work with, or just did projects by myself.
Oh, okay. My uni assigned us like groups every term, like, so you have different group for autumn term, for spring term, and for summer term, and it's already been assigned. And I think 70% of our work is group project. So like, so it was a bit of struggle at the beginning because we don't know each other, and some of us are like in India, some of us are in China, some of us in Indo, and like some of it in London. But now that I'm here, definitely the problem was 1 or 2 people in the group would be contributing less to the work. maybe speaking up less, maybe whenever we try to reach out, they're not responding, and all of that stuff. Then come to think about it, maybe that was why it was so intense for me, because the amount of group project that I have to do. I never realized it. I thought it was just because of the assignments, but maybe if it were individual, it would be less intense. I don't know. You think how's the ratio between group project and your individual assignment? Like back in maybe your masters.
I think I had fewer group projects, but one thing that I did notice about group projects is, overall the work, you can divide the work up, and theoretically supposed to be easier if everybody does their share. But in reality, you need everybody to be doing their share, and you need to build rapport with everybody. There's a lot of initial overhead, I guess, before you can work with a group of people, and that initial overhead is very difficult to cultivate, and you end up spending a lot of time dealing with things that you otherwise wouldn't need to deal with if you're working on the project by yourself,
Please mind the gap between Indonesia and the UK. Thank you so much, Kheeran. It's been so interesting and informative. We really appreciate that you allow a portion of your time to talk to us instead of enjoying the beautiful day outside. So for this series, we like to end with something called the Final 5. These are rapid fire questions, so you have to answer in one word or one sentence maximum. I know you're going to struggle a bit with that.
Although it's okay if you feel like you have to elaborate, of course it's fine. But for fun, we just like to emphasize. We just like to emphasize that you have to answer in one word or one sentence maximum. Okay, are you ready? Try to answer it quickly.
Yeah. And try to
okay,
answer
are you
quickly.
ready?
Yes.
First question. What's one thing you took for granted that you value now?
I would definitely say family.
Good answer. Okay. Second question. Your favorite things to do in UK?
Oh, this is tough. Oh God. Okay. Summer.
Okay. Sunbathing.
Just chilling with friends, enjoying the sun.
All right. I'm looking forward to do that too. You know.
Essentially.
Okay. Next question. What is the biggest lesson you've learned in the last 12 months?
Communication is super important, even when you can't see
I like
people.
that you're giving like all the good answers. What's one change you made that really boosted your life? Yeah.
No, just in relation to everything we've been talking about, definitely engaging more with the friends of my course, 100%.
Okay, Angela, last question.
Last question, are you ready? What are you excited for in the future?
Freedom. I feel like that was an easy question.
Freedom.
It's been an interesting past year of COVID, and definitely what I'm looking forward to being able to see both of you in person. You're not too far away as well.
So that's all the questions that we have. Thank you for joining us today, Kheeran. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I'm really grateful that I could be on today, and you guys are both very wonderful. All three of you are very wonderful people, and I keep leaving out Tamara because she's right next to me. It's very easy to leave her out. I do apologize for that. But no, you're all really great, and I'm really glad that I could be on the podcast today and share my experience. And I hope that at least one thing that I've said somewhere gets to one of you.
Thank you so much, Kheeran, for being here with us today. And for our listeners, thanks for tuning in, and see you in the next episode.
Please mind the gap between Indonesia and the UK.